The consumer alert level has been raised to a warning in South Korea after authorities confirmed the phishing scams are related to the Coupang personal data breach. The government is setting up a task force to deal with the recent data leak. South Korea is determined to address low growth and achieve a 3% economic growth rate through AI innovation, the country's science and ICT minister says. The ruling Democratic Party is set to table a revised bill to establish a special court dedicated to insurrection-related cases at the National Assembly's final plenary session of the year, setting the stage for another fierce standoff with the opposition. The Financial Supervisory Service has raised the consumer alert level to prevent secondary damage related to the Coupang personal data leak. The government will also form an interagency task force to handle the data breach at Coupang. Cha Yong-kyung has more.
The Financial Supervisory Service has raised its consumer alert level to warning, saying that secondary damage such as voice phishing and smishing related to the Coupang personal data leak has been confirmed. According to the FSS, scammers are posing as prosecutors, police, and government bodies and pretending to handle the response to the data leak before luring people to phishing sites. The FSS said in a recent report that consumers had already been defrauded out of 11 million won, or around $7,400 through these phishing scams. It stated if a court, prosecutors, or police, the postal service, and the link demand that you access a certain site or link or install an app on the pretext of returned registered court mail or case verification, it is 100% voice phishing. Meanwhile, the government announced on Thursday that it will establish an interagency task force to handle the Coupang data breach. The decision was made at a ministerial meeting on science and technology chaired by Science Minister Baek Kyung-hoon. The task force, led by the second vice minister of the Ministry of Science and ICT, Ryu Jae-myung, will include representatives from the Science Ministry as well as related bodies, such as the Personal Information Protection Committee, the Korea Communications Commission, and the Financial Services Commission. It will convene both regular and emergency meetings to exchange updates on ongoing police and government investigations and to explore measures to reinforce Coupang's responsibility in addressing the breach. Coupang has faced criticism for its lukewarm response to the breach and its uncooperative attitude toward Korean authorities. Harold Rogers, interim chief executive officer of Coupang, apologized for the breach during a parliamentary hearing Wednesday, but did not present detailed measures on customer compensation or data security. Angered by what they called Coupang's passive response, parliamentarians vowed tougher measures, including a national investigation. Cha Yong-kyung, Arirang News.
In other news, Science Minister Baek Kyung-hoon believes AI innovation can serve to strengthen South Korea's economic growth rate to the 3% range. Park Jun-han reports.
In a bold push to revitalize the nation's economy, South Korea's Minister of Science and ICT Baek Kyung-hoon has announced plans to leverage artificial intelligence to address low growth and achieve a 3% potential growth rate. Speaking at a CEO breakfast forum hosted by the Korea Chamber of Commerce and Industry on Thursday, Minister Bae emphasized the role of AI in transforming key industries like manufacturing, defense, biotechnology, and culture. The host of Thursday's event, Choi Tae-won, who is also chairman of SK Group and the Korea Chamber of Commerce and Industry, said that Korea's growth rate has fallen by about 1 percentage point a year since the 1990s, warning it could turn negative within 5 years unless a new national strategy is adopted to revive growth. On the same day, there was a science and technology-related ministers' meeting. Minister Bae outlined key initiatives, such as appropriately distributing NVIDIA's advanced GPUs promised to the South Korean government, developing a domestic neural processing unit, and developing a hyper-AI strategy called an AI Highway, which aims to enhance domestic network infrastructure and strengthen industrial AI competitiveness.
Starting next year, we must move decisively toward an AI transformation and deliver tangible results in science and technology innovation. Across all industries, from autos and shipbuilding to finance, AI and digital technologies are driving productivity and value creation. If government ministries work together, science and AI can power real economic growth.
As early as February next year, the government will distribute 10,000 of NVIDIA's high-performance GPUs to South Korean tech startups and researchers studying and training AI. 박준환, Arirang News.
And the Ministry of SMEs and Startups on Thursday announced a comprehensive plan to make the country one of the world's 4 leading venture powerhouses. Under this 5-year plan, the government provided the blueprint to foster 10,000 AI deep tech startups, create 50 unicorns and decacorns, and grow the venture investment market to 40 trillion Korean won annually. The government will strategically allocate a portion of the 50,000 NVIDIA GPUs to support research, development, and demonstration by ventures and startups. It will organize its policy paradigm around 6 strategic industries: AI, bio, content, defense, energy, and advanced manufacturing. A proposal backed by the ruling party to reshape how South Korea handles insurrection cases are reigniting political tensions at the National Assembly as rival parties brace for a final showdown before the year ends. Our Moon Hae-ryun has the story.
South Korea's ruling Democratic Party says it will table a revised bill to establish a special court dedicated to insurrection-related cases at the National Assembly's final plenary session of the year, setting the stage for another fierce standoff with the opposition. The Assembly is scheduled to hold its last plenary session of 2025 from December 22nd to 24th, and the DP plans to put the revised bill on the agenda on December 23rd. The party argues a dedicated court is necessary to ensure swift and fair trials in cases of national importance, including charges of insurrection and foreign aggression, an argument it says reflects growing public demand for accountability.
Time can favor insurrectionists, not justice. The public wants swift and fair judgment. That's why a dedicated court is needed.
But the main opposition People Power Party strongly disputes that reasoning, warning that the revised bill still carries constitutional risks. It says the same logic could be used to create tailor-made courts for specific individuals, including President Lee Jae-myung.
As the Unification Church scandal turns toward the Democratic Party and the Lee administration, a regime-friendly special prosecutor is staging a political show.
The legal debate has been further complicated by a move from the judiciary itself. On Thursday, the Supreme Court announced it would establish special panels under new court rules to fast-track nationally significant cases, including insurrection and rebellion charges, citing the need for speed and fairness without legislative intervention. Court officials say the measure is designed to prevent delays caused by constitutional challenges, which could otherwise halt proceedings for months. Unlike the DP's bill, which creates a special court through legislation, the Supreme Court's plan preserves random case assignment and relies on internal court rules. Despite that, the DP says it will press ahead with legislation. With the People Power Party expected to launch a filibuster, passage of the bill is now likely to be pushed to the morning of December 24th, the final day of this year's plenary session, setting up one last political showdown before the year ends. Moon Hae-ryun, Arirang News.
President Lee Jae-myung was briefed today by the Defense and Veterans Ministries. This marked the 5th session since the series of policy briefings for 2026 began last week. Our Kim Bo-kyung tells us more.
President Lee Jae-myung received more policy briefings on Thursday from the Defense, Patriots, and Veterans Ministries along with their affiliated agencies. This as part of a series of policy briefings where government ministries report to the president on their key agendas. President Lee underlined the importance of the military faithfully serving the country and compensating those who made sacrifices.
국가 공동체가 존속하기 위해서 가장 중요한 것은 공동체 자체를 보존하는 것입니다. 국민의 군대로서 대한민국이 전 세계에 정말 강력한 국가로 존속할 수 있도록 본연의 임무를 제대로 다 수행해 주길 기대합니다. 특별한 희생을 치른 우리 구성원들에게 특별한 보상을 함으로써 우리 공동체가 그 구성원들의 그 각별한 희생을 잊지 않았다는 것을 언제나 보여주고 또 증명해야 된다고 생각합니다.
In terms of the Defense Ministry, President Lee touched on giving more authority to the Marine Corps in efforts to restructure the three-pronged military structure, the Army, the Navy, and the Air Force, to a quasi-4 one that includes the Marine Corps. He added that the soldiers were also victims of last year's botched martial law and that civil education to teach them constitutional values must be properly implemented.
군이야 죽으라면 죽는 거고 뭐 앞에 뭐가 있는지 모르지만 진격하라면 하는 건데 이게 과연 합헌적인 정당한 명령인지 아닌지를 사실 판단하기 어렵잖아요. 특히 군의 특성상 그렇죠. 그런데 책임은 안 질 수 없잖아요, 또. 그래서 그런 문제들에 대해서 좀 판단할 역량을 좀 갖춰줘야 되겠다.
The Veterans Ministry vowed to expand to cover more former service members.
In 2026, policy will be reinforced in both depth and breadth, with an emphasis on enhancing the level of financial support so that no one is left unprotected.
President Lee urged that proper honors should be given to the overseas veterans who fought in the Korean War, and also called for the ministry to make sure veterans' hospitals provide high-quality service. When it comes to the recovery and repatriation of the remains of independence activist An Jung-gun, President Lee said he would add it to the agenda for the upcoming Korea-China summit. Kim Bo-kyung, Arirang News.
The South Korean won is hovering at precarious levels, threatening to lock in a new normal of 1,481 to the dollar. To discuss some more about the government's all-out response and what this means, our Kim Do-yeon joins me in the studio. Do-yeon, let's start with the numbers. They've been extreme. Where do we stand right now?
Right. First, the South Korean won today closed at 1478 to the dollar at the markets closing today. But let's see the yearly trend. We started the first quarter with an average of 13.99 won to the dollar. Things worsened in the second quarter and hitting an average peak of 14.53 won. We saw some stabilization in the third quarter, dropping back to the 1300 won range. But that relief was short-lived. In this fourth quarter, the average has shot back up, reaching the 1475 won mark. Effectively, the high exchange rate is no longer a spike, it's becoming structural.
So we are seeing a structural rise. And the question is, why is the won so weak? Is it just external factors like the strong dollar?
Well, it is a combination of both. But experts point to a fundamental imbalance in supply and demand within Korea. Experts explain that while everyone wants dollars to invest in the U.S., no one wants to sell them, which is fundamental to what determines the market value. Exporters are also holding onto their dollars, expecting the won to fall further, creating a supply crunch.
Demand for dollars is high because investors are leaving the Korean market for the U.S., while supply is low because exporters are holding on to their dollars. Those who have already invested in the U.S. are also keeping their profits there instead of bringing them back.
So it is a vicious cycle. Now, the government seems to be waging an all-out war to, break this loop. What are they exactly doing?
So the government is tackling this from multiple fronts. Now, it started with a simple message, acknowledging the issue. Now, agencies have been meeting constantly. Even this morning, Deputy Prime Minister Koo In-cheol and chiefs of the Financial Services Commission, Financial Supervisory Services, and the Central Bank met, saying they'll be monitoring the exchange rate 24/7. And the latest measure came from the Finance Ministry, with more focus now on help from private institutions. It raised the limit on foreign banks' forward exchange positions to 200% to physically bring more dollars into the system. On top of this, the presidential office summoned executives from 7 major conglomerates this afternoon, including Samsung, LG, and Hyundai Groups, a direct SOS asking them to release their dollar holdings. As I mentioned, exporters are hesitant on turning their earned dollars into won right now. Now, what was groundbreaking was when financial authorities said it will use the National Pension Service. The National Pension Service runs around 800 trillion won, or $670 billion in foreign investment, which is around 60% of its total investment. And it does hedge against the dollar to keep won stable, but it doesn't work that well right now.
Because the rules for the National Pension Service's overseas investment are operated too transparently, how much will go out is all known. Furthermore, the decision-making criteria, such as the timing of hedging or when to stop hedging, are too well known to overseas and domestic market participants.
So the new plan is to make these rules less transparent and more strategic, effectively hiding their course to keep the market guessing.
So those are some aggressive steps, but I do have to ask, will these work? And with the current level of the exchange rate, is the nation in danger of having a financial crisis?
Now, first, historically, the government has been involved in dealing with the foreign exchange market when it affects the nation's economy. Now, the goal is not to distort the market while making policies favorable to strengthen won. As for the conglomerates exchanging their dollar profits into won, that might not be a sustainable measure.
Even if these large companies release their dollars, individual or institutional investors are likely to buy them up immediately to invest in the U.S. So while there might be a short-term impact, it is not a sustainable solution.
Now, for other measures, we will have to see. And as for your questions on whether this could become a financial crisis, the BOK governor defined this not as a financial crisis, but as a livelihood crisis.
I completely disagree that this is a traditional financial crisis. But in other respects, I would call it a crisis, and I am deeply worried. The current exchange rate has a significant impact on inflation. Furthermore, when rates rise like this, the divide between those who benefit and those who lose becomes extreme.
He warned that if the exchange rate stays at the 1471 level or even goes higher, inflation next year could jump from the forecast 2.1% to mid-2% range, deepening the economic divide between exporters who benefit and households who suffer.
I see. Toyan, thanks for the coverage tonight. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
U.S. President Donald Trump says the former Biden administration is to blame for America's current economic woes, and that his administration has been fixing the failings. Our Park Gun-woo covers his remarks.
Once dead, America is again one of the hottest countries in the world. That's how Trump described the U.S. during his roughly 20-minute national address from the White House on Wednesday night. He opened by criticizing former President Joe Biden while praising what he called the achievements of his own administration.
11 months ago, I inherited a mess, and I'm fixing it. When I took office, inflation was the worst in 48 years, and some would say in the history of our country, which caused prices to be higher than ever before, making life unaffordable for millions and millions of Americans.
Trump claimed prices are now falling, and he's bringing them down very fast, specifically citing a Thanksgiving turkey that he said was 33% cheaper than last year. He also touted his achievements, speaking about the large investment he secured, crediting his tariff policies.
I've secured a record-breaking $18 trillion of investment into the United States, which means jobs, wage increases, growth, factory openings, and far greater national security. Much of this success has been accomplished by tariffs, my favorite word, tariffs, which for many decades have been used successfully by other countries against us, but not anymore.
Trump added that wages are rising much faster than inflation and said more families would feel the economic benefits of upcoming policies, including major tax cuts. The U.S. president also announced what he called a warrior dividend, promising over $1,700 checks to U.S. service members before Christmas. He also hinted at an appointment for a new Federal Reserve chair who believes in low interest rates by a lot that's soon to be announced. However, recent polls paint a different picture. A Reuters and Ipsos poll released Tuesday showed that just 33% of U.S. adults approve of how Trump's handling the economy. In a separate poll by PBS News, NPR, and Marist released on Wednesday, Trump recorded his lowest ever economic approval ratings, including during his first term, with only 36% approval, as many cite concerns over the cost of living. With next year's midterm elections approaching, which are widely seen as a measure of public sentiment toward the Trump administration, eyes are on whether Wednesday's address will make the poll results rise again. 박건우, Arirang News.
South Korea can be a good example for Ukraine when learning about peace negotiations and ceasefire management. That's what Norwegian Foreign Minister Espen Barth Eide said during an interview with Yeonhap News Agency in Seoul on Thursday, while pointing out differences between the Korean War and the Ukraine crisis. He stressed the similarities and that both North Korea and Russia faced stronger resistance and international support than they expected. The foreign minister further voiced concerns over military ties between Pyongyang and Moscow and called for Norway to build a close security partnership with South Korea. And now, while in South Korea, Eide held talks with his South Korean counterpart Do Hyun on Wednesday to explore the two countries' cooperation on defense, AI, and minerals. The Norwegian's top diplomat's visit to South Korea marks the first of its kind in 32 years. The popular South Korean Netflix drama, The Price of Confession, ranked as the most watched non-English series worldwide on Netflix last week. Starring actresses Jeon Do-yeon and Kim Go-eun, the series recorded 5.7 million views between December 8th and December 14th, according to Netflix's official website. It topped the charts in a total of 39 countries, including Bolivia, the Dominican Republic, Ecuador, and South Korea. The mystery thriller follows a woman who is accused of killing her husband and is sent to prison where she's offered a deal by a convicted murderer.
Even though there was a brief cold snap across the country this morning, temperatures moved up quickly in the daytime. Temperatures climbed up to 7 degrees Celsius in Seoul, 10 degrees in Changsu-gun County, and 9 degrees in Bonghagun County, make a huge temperature gap between morning and day. The weather will continue to be unusually mild for winter for the time being. The daytime temperature in Seoul will reach 10 degrees tomorrow and will go up to 11 degrees on Saturday, which is about 7 degrees warmer than average temperature for this time of year. Tomorrow morning, Seoul will start off at 0 degrees, Daejeon at -3. Daily highs will rise up to 13 degrees in Daegu, 16 degrees in Gwangju. Rain will begin on Saturday morning in central parts of the country and the Jeollado provinces, then spread to the rest of the country by the afternoon. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
That is all we have for tonight. I'm Kim Dami. From all of us here at Arirang, thanks for watching and good night.